Welcome to Drumbeats, the must-listen-to podcast which explains why Indigenous partnerships are the key to securing successful outcomes in natural resource and infrastructure investment in Canada. I'm Mark Magnacca. Today on Drumbeats, my co-host Rob Brant and I are joined today by Dawn Madahbee-Leach, Chair of the National Indigenous Economic Development Board and one of the most influential architects of Indigenous economic policy and finance in Canada. Over nearly 4 decades, Dawn has helped scale a First Nation-owned financial institution from a $150,000 loan fund to more than $170 million, deployed across 4,000 Indigenous-led businesses, spanning energy, infrastructure, natural resources, and international trade. As chair, she led the development of Canada's National Indigenous Economic Strategy, a framework authored by Indigenous leaders and national organizations, setting out 107 calls to economic prosperity, now shaping government policy, corporate procurement, and institutional capital allocation. In this conversation, we explore why Indigenous partnerships are no longer peripheral but central to successful investment outcomes, how equity participation is transforming the economics of significant projects, and what senior decision makers need to understand about Indigenous-led capital, governance, and long-term value creation in Canada.
Dawn Madahbee-Leach, it's great to see you. It's been a while since our paths crossed. I'm grateful you've set aside a few minutes so we can catch up.
Well, I'm very honored to be here too, and finally to have a good chat with you. This would be great to have a good visit today.
Great. Welcome, Dawn. We're very pleased to have you speak to our audience over here in the UK and beyond, talking about some of the opportunities and challenges with Indigenous peoples and companies in Canada.
You've had such a varied career, Dawn, and you've been at the forefront of so many changes on the economic development file for Indigenous people in Canada. But maybe for our audience, just tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, where you're talking to us from today.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored again to participate in this session, especially today is the 10th anniversary of the release of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And, that was an important piece of work done here in Canada to really help educate individuals on what has the legacy of the residential schools here and the impacts that it's had, especially in the economic development side, which is the area that I get to work in. And I'm speaking to you today from beautiful Manitoulin Island, which is in I always say the center of Canada, because we're located in Northern Ontario. And I'm in my First Nation community, which is Ondek Omnikaning. In our language, that means Crow Haven, where the crows live. And true to its name, we do have, I think the smartest bird you could find is a crow. They seem to be able to communicate really well. And so it's really beautiful to often see them and learn from them and the surroundings. But Manitoulin Island is named Manitou is the creator, and it's the place where the creator chose as his home, where all of our beautiful medicines grow naturally here. We have beautiful clear waters surrounding this island. You could look 70 feet into the water and see the ground. It's so beautiful. It's an amazing place to live. And I have a chance to travel the world, and I could kiss the ground when I come home. It's so beautiful here. But I've been very privileged over my career to work for my people, and I did work in Toronto years ago. I was a paralegal at Fasken, the law firm there, and I also ended up working for the federal government as well while I was there. Then I moved home and started doing consulting, and I was hired to set up our own financial institution And so I did the feasibility study and business plan and funding applications, and started up the Wabatech Business Development Corporation. And
What years are we talking about,
we're
Dawn?
talking about back in 1987. And so I did a lot of that work, and I helped them to try to hire or put together all the information they needed to hire an executive director or general manager. And so they had a set of interviews, but they came back to me and they asked me if I would run this for a little while instead. And it's going to be pretty close to 40 years that I've been running our own First Nation-owned financial institution, where we started out with a little loan fund of only $150,000, and we're past $170 million in loans and investments now.
Wow.
Or about 4,000 business projects in northeastern Ontario. And so I've been so fortunate to work with our business people in every sector you could think of. And because of that work and getting to know construction, tourism, forestry, aquaculture, and commercial fisheries, and learning about all these businesses, oftentimes I was asked to speak and advocate on behalf of these business sectors for our people. And that's led me to become the chair of the National Indigenous Economic Development Board, which is a government-appointed board. I've been on that board for a lot of years, and I was appointed chair back in 2021. I served as the vice chair for many years. And I'm on probably about 6 boards now, currently publicly traded, as well as Crown agency boards and some not-for-profits, all related to helping bring the Indigenous voice to those levels. So that's kind of my background and career.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. You've had such an impact in so many different organizations, but you get to do it all from your home First Nation. A great testament to you that so many different organizations have wanted you to be a part. I know you're on TC Energy's board, Desnete, out of Saskatchewan, the Development Corp, and so many others. So maybe talk about the National the Indigenous Economic Development Board and some of the work you've done there.
Yes, well, I'm very proud of the fact that I get to work alongside some of Canada's foremost business, economic, and community leaders, and have traveled across the country because we like to be in community when we're meeting with people to learn firsthand about the issues that they all deal with. For example, we'll go to Atlantic and learn all about fisheries there. We've gone to central Canada to see some of the amazing urban reserve developments that are taking place and generating significant revenues for the First Nations who own those urban reserves. We've been to definitely in Alberta, we look at resource development and learn so much about that and all the issues and how to better engage and include Indigenous people in these sectors. Our board has been instrumental in working with the OECD to have the first ever study done by the OECD on Indigenous economic development. So we worked with them started in 2017 and launched the first ever global report on Indigenous people and economic development in 2 years later in 2019. And then we had 3 country reports, including Canada, Australia, and Sweden. And since then, I've been working with them on the mining regions reports as well, and ensuring that we have an Indigenous perspective added to those reports. So this is because of the work of the National Indigenous Economic Development Board. And the other significant two other significant pieces of work is every 3 to 4 years, we issue our National Indigenous Economic Progress Report. It's sort of like a State of the Indigenous Nation report that we produce, and that's always often quoted by other studies. So it's on our website as well. We were very instrumental in implementing one of the OECD recommendations in the Canada report was to develop a National Indigenous Economic Strategy for Canada. And this report was done and penned exclusively by Indigenous leaders from more than 25 different Indigenous national organizations. We worked together on this, and I'm very proud of what we produced. And you can find this strategy at niestrategy.ca. It has 4 pathways that we look at for Indigenous inclusion and Indigenous economic reconciliation. These 4 pathways are people, land, finance, and infrastructure. And we have 107 calls to economic prosperity set out there. We set up a new institute at First Nations University of Canada to monitor the implementation of the strategy. And we're hoping to produce a report in 2027 on which elements have been acted upon in terms of the calls to economic prosperity. We know that there's been different governments, institutions, even our own people implementing components of this strategy. And so we're excited to see what that report shows us in terms of, corporate Canada as well, taking a hold of this strategy and taking sections of it to implement as their own. So we're really excited to see where this leads us.
After 3 years, Dawn, since the strategy was published, what's your sense? Are you happy with what you're seeing generally?
Yes, we've seen companies say that we're going to take, these calls to economic prosperity as our own and try to make some differences there. We're seeing different levels of government using the strategy to set out the work that they do as well in their work with Indigenous peoples. We have some really great examples already, like the Regional Development Agency for Atlantic Canada, ACOA. I'm trying to think of what ACOA stands for, but right now it doesn't come to mind. But they have really embraced this, especially when it comes to procurement and the proactive ways that they're engaging Indigenous businesses to take on contracts for that federal development agency in Canada. That's one example. We have other companies that are embracing the report too, and trying to support, for example, financial literacy programs for Indigenous youth. So that's pretty exciting to see. But there's some really great things that are happening. We're also seeing, we're trying to include institutions of justice and health, as well as education. And so they're looking at taking on some of those calls to economic prosperity. And as they do this, we're encouraging them to report to the Institute at the First Nations University of Canada so we can record all of this and use these as great examples as to how people are embracing Indigenous economic inclusion across Canada.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, for 40 years, you've been pushing, Dawn, to advance economic development for Indigenous people. Over the last 10 years, you mentioned Truth and Reconciliation Report 10 years ago. You must feel this is an exciting time to see some of what you've been pushing for come to fruition, even if there's still a lot of work yet to be done.
Absolutely. You mentioned, or we talked a little bit about my appointment to different boards, and I'm so glad to see many of the Indigenous leaders that I know are now serving on bank boards and publicly traded company boards. That's really where decisions are made and where we can really impact Indigenous inclusion is on these boards and around the corporate board table. But also at levels of government now, you see Indigenous people in cabinet, with the federal cabinet. That's been an amazing thing to see. Our Governor General is Inuit woman, and all of these types of changes have been very positive and are allowing our youth to see our own people in these kinds of places where they weren't before. And I think that this is really, really important. We need to celebrate that and showcase that more as well. But it's really trying to make a difference in our communities to make sure that we have the infrastructure that we need, the basics. There's still a long ways to go, especially in parts of Canada where we still have many infrastructure needs, including safe drinking water. I think we're close to realizing all of this, but it's still a lot of work to do, making the business cases to make these things happen. If you can have good drinking water in a mine in a remote northern Canada, why can't we have that in a First Nation community or Inuit community?
Absolutely. Right. It's kind of, a fundamental. And I think there was something that just came out in the past few days about some of these basic services that it is mandatory. It's no longer a choice that they must be provided. And the federal government, who's been responsible in some of these areas, has not delivered what it is mandated to.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of there were a couple of court decisions, in the last couple
on
of
human
weeks,
rights,
Mark.
human rights
Yes.
to water, to technology. We this is something, and the great thing is we have leaders that aren't waiting for government to make these changes too. Not every community has that ability, but some communities do, and they're just making it happen. But I'm really happy when I see our friends in the Northwest Territories owning the broadband services there. Taking on full ownership and making sure that their communities are fully serviced. I think those are amazing steps forward. Or when we have fishery disputes, well, communities are buying the companies that wholesale and retail fish globally, and I think that being part owners, equity owners, in a lot of the initiatives is one of the solutions, and some of our communities are taking that on, and we've seen now that we have a strong set of national Indigenous organizations that can help support all Indigenous communities to become more involved in all of the different sectors. And we have a National Aboriginal Fisheries Association, for example. They are really doing some good work and great advice to First Nations when it comes to fisheries or forestry. The First Nation Major Projects Coalition is doing a great work in advocating Indigenous involvement in major energy and mining projects across the country. We have National Indigenous Tourism Association that's helping our businesses to not only welcome and learn about our culture in Canada, but they're also looking at exporting their knowledge across the world as well in terms of how to host businesses in Indigenous communities in the proper way. Tourism used to be something that we were so afraid of because it was exploiting us a lot. But now when you take hold of it and manage it yourself, you have that ability to share the beautiful aspects of our culture. So we're lucky in Canada that we have a great set of national Indigenous organizations.
What's the next big priority that the National Indigenous Economic Development Board is working on? You mentioned the scorecard coming, the report in 27. I know procurement has been important, but what are the top priorities in the next year?
Well, one of the things that we've been advancing as well is with Canada looking to diversify its trade. We know that Indigenous businesses are already exporting, but they're also interested in diversifying their trade. And we've been starting to build a lot of relationships in Asia. And I think that that's one of the areas where we're really looking at the Indo-Pacific in particular, I should say, too, area that we're looking at for expanding Indigenous trade. So when you look at the fact that we have Canada's party to the Indigenous Peoples Economic Trade and Cooperation Arrangement, it's not a trade agreement, but it's an arrangement between Australia, New Zealand, Taiwan, and Canada. The 4 countries have signed on, and there's others that are looking to sign on too. That we're also building Indigenous to Indigenous trade, and I think that that's going to be key. But I think that's one of the biggest projects coming up. We've had some trade missions already, especially for women, Indigenous women in business. That where we've showcased them at the World Expo in Osaka, Japan this past August. And they had many business-to-business meetings there, and some doors have opened for agreements between Indigenous women in Canada with different companies throughout Japan. And that was pretty exciting. As well as there was a mission to Taiwan and Vietnam. So those have taken place, and some doors have opened there too for some trade relationships. And I believe there's some that are already being acted on in the technology field.
That's excellent. There's a lot going on, and you've seen this transition, and it must be, as Rob alluded to earlier, such a game changer. But you're not only on the National Indigenous Economic Board driving these initiatives, but you're also in private enterprise, such as TC Energy. You're on the board there. Can you tell us a bit about that and what's working, how you see the private sector having changed as now you're participating in one of the largest organizations, quite recognized?
Well, thank you for that. It's been just over a year that I've joined that board, and I could say it's a two-way learning process because there's many times I've joined boards in the past, and I always find there's a lot to learn, and I am learning so much about the energy sector by being on that board. I have a lot of board experience over the years, and I can apply that to, committees like governance and audit and HR and safety and all of that. But learning about the energy sector, it's a whole new language and new acronyms you have to learn, and the processes. So I would say my first year has been focused on learning about the energy sector, but I also feel that I'm teaching when I'm on that board. So I'm teaching about why it's important to include the Indigenous people and to respect their voices when it comes to areas that we work in. And I think that really helps to guide the company to do their work with Indigenous people in a more inclusive way and proper way, better consultations, and how to do that in a respectful way. I think that's the most important thing. So we've had lots of discussions, and I'm very happy to say that the full board and the CEO, the executive leadership team are so receptive to the advice that I've given, and really receptive to working with Indigenous people in a cooperative way. So it's been pretty exciting to be around that table and to work with a really good group of people that are very open.
Yes, you seem to be ahead of the curve all the time, because now Prime Minister Carney's talking about Canada being an energy superpower. And here you've been at TC Energy for the past year, getting them ready for the opportunity that lies in front of them, which has been reflected throughout your career. You're always just seem to be doing the groundwork to let things go to the next level. So congratulations. All Canadians benefit from leadership like that.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And you're right. I don't know how these opportunities come my way. I always think I'm meant to be in certain places at the certain times, and it's really helped because I've worked in the finance sector pretty much my whole career in financing businesses, especially commercial financing is not as easy as retail banking or financing. And mind you, we're starting to get into it with the organization I work with. We're looking at providing housing mortgages because housing is a real issue for First Nations people well, Indigenous people, I should say, right across the country. So I'm hopeful that the work that we do in housing is going to make a positive change. I could tell you that growing up myself, there were times I'm the oldest of 11. There were times when our family had no home, and so it was an area where definitely I always say we were the poorest of the poor in our community and my family, and I think that's given me the ability to work hard, thinking about the children who might be in my same situation that I grew up in, to make a difference for them and to make sure that they have a shelter, food, wherever they live in Canada. That's really important to me. And that's always what's driven me. And of course, I've lived with the fact that, I went to Indian Day school myself, and my mother was in residential school, so I know what the impacts of that have been on my family and myself as well. But I've always used all of that, anything negative, I use it as fuel to make me do more to help. And so that's one of the ways that I look at things. And so sometimes I feel that doors open for me because of that background. It was a little bit tough in my formative years and growing up, and but I think that that's given me the ability to have a lot of empathy and knowledge about how to make changes and how to make things better for Indigenous people.
Yeah, Dawn, you're such a role model for so many. Who were the influential people in your life that drove you and gave you that drive and ambition?
Well, of course, I always like to credit my mother and my grandmothers the most, and I think it's been the women in my life, because the women in my life were never didn't say that this is a woman's job or a man's job. We did all the work. I chopped wood. I hauled water. I grew up in a house with no electricity, and it was just 2 rooms, 11 kids for that. And so
Wow.
it was the fact that we did all the roles, and I saw my mother do that. She could fix an oil stove herself, taking the carburetor apart and fixing it. She had no training in that, but she could do that. So when I would see somebody able to do that, I learned how to do that as well. And I just feel that those were advantages I got, learning from these strong women who could just about do anything because they had to, out of necessity. But that really showed me that there's nothing that we can't do.
Well, you sure have proved that, Dawn. There's nothing you can't do, that's for sure.
I kind of feel that way. I try my best anyway, but it's yeah. And then, you know what? And today I get to work alongside amazing leaders, whether they're First Nation, Inuit, or Métis. And today they're also my role models too. And Canada is fortunate that we've had people, and I could talk to my good friends like Chief Terry Paul, for example. We've worked together on the National Indigenous Economic Development Board for many years. And, outside the meeting, when we talk, he grew up the same way I did. And the first time I went to Member 2, I remember the poverty there. I was there when I hate to tell you this, but when I was only 16, my cousins and I hitchhiked across Canada. And thank goodness we were safe. We were safe the whole way. But I always remember being in Member 2 and seeing the poverty there. And now when I go today, I'm just the Member 2 First Nation in Eastern Canada is so progressive, and I'm so happy to see that. And just like in my own area, you see our communities with paved streets now, in better housing than we ever had, and to see that we have safe communities with street lamps and playgrounds for our children that didn't exist before. So there's progress that you see, and we have our own people providing the goods and services that we need in our communities, and they provide goods and services to the region surrounding us, because it's a proven fact that when Indigenous communities progress, so do the regions around them. We did economic leakage studies that show that we really keep these regions strong. We're contributing to Canada's economy because we're involved in providing goods and services. So our people are strong in that way. A lot of people often think that we're a drain on the economy, when the opposite is quite the fact, as we're contributors to Canada's economy. And I think that that's important for everybody to realize, and that we have people who are amazingly successful in every economic sector that you can think of. And when I talked earlier about investing in about 4,000 business projects in my region, they're in every sector and they're making a difference. And oftentimes they're leaders in their sector in our whole region. And people don't get that. They still don't realize that that contribution that our people make. And if we open those doors a little bit wider for our people to progress, it's only going to benefit Canada and really the world in the long run. When we're looking at, I've been involved in helping to develop working with Global Affairs to develop the chapter on Indigenous people and trade that we're trying to include in every one of Canada's free trade agreements with other countries. And so I've met with the negotiating teams who are involved in negotiating free trade agreements with Canada. And it's been great to educate them about what it'll mean, not only if they include their Indigenous people in trade, how it'll open up and benefit their countries as well. This is the proven fact again that the more that we're involved, the better the outcomes in terms of regional development across the world. Because Indigenous people are, we have a history of working hard, survival. Just to make things happen, we had to provide the goods and services we needed, and especially in the remote parts of all the different countries. And we're good at that.
Yes, and I think look back in history, before the settlers arrived, the Indigenous nations were trading,
Thriving.
amongst themselves and and thriving. And some of the most competitive businesses, Rob and I have had a chance to interact with over the past few years are Indigenous groups who are the hungriest, the most competitive, got solid business plans and missions, and are delivering and creating value for all their shareholders and stakeholders. And as you said, it raises up the community around it. And that's one of the strategic advantages that Canada has at this point in time through the work of yourselves and others who have laid this foundation. Because as these gaps are addressed in terms of infrastructure, it raises everybody up, equal opportunity, and everybody's hungry to succeed, Indigenous or non-Indigenous. So it's really exciting.
It is exciting, and I'm so fortunate I get to see that firsthand because every day I work with Indigenous businesses, and we're investing in them. We have programs that help Indigenous youth get into business, Indigenous women, and now we have access to a little bit more capital than we had because as in the Indigenous-owned financial institutions had lending limits, but now we have access to higher limits because things cost more, and we need to be able to support our business growth as well. We've had clients come to us 14 times as they grew their business, and we financed them each time, and it's so exciting to see. So even though I'm on these national boards and TC's an international board when you think of it. We work in the U.S. and Mexico as well as Canada. But when I see I'm signing off approval on a project here for financing, it's making a difference. It's really making a difference, and it's an opportunity for them to grow as well. So, I'm so excited about the prospects for our people going forward, and I'm just so glad that I've helped in some way to open the doors for them. But I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciated this opportunity to visit with you both. I felt like we were sitting around a table having some tea together, which is how I like to do things. So anyway, thank you so much for your time and for thinking of inviting me. It was a real pleasure to have a visit with you both. And sometime I want to interview you and see more about your lives too, because it sounds pretty interesting. And quick question, Mark, where in Manitoba are
I was
you?
born in Brant in Manitoba.
Yeah. Okay.
Spent my summers at Riding Mountain National Park.
Nice.
So Clear Lake.
Yeah, beautiful area. You know what? People don't know the natural beauty around Manitoba. It's one of the most beautiful places, and we live there every summer in Manitoba.
Yes.
And we live close to Riverton, Reggie's hometown.
Yeah.
And so we're on Lake Winnipeg, and it's just beautiful.
Beautiful.
I can hardly wait, to go back. But anyway, I'm lucky. Beautiful Manitoulin and beautiful Manitoba.
Yes, we got it all together. Thank you very much. It's been great to have you, Dawn.
Yeah,
yes,
Dawn Madahbee-Leach, thank you very much for your time today. It's been great talking to you, and congratulations on all you've achieved.
Absolutely.
And keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. Miigwech. Take care.
Yeah, and
thank you. Thank you to Dawn Madahbee-Leach for sharing your insights with us, and thank you for viewing and listening. Mark your calendars for the upcoming 2026 Summit, taking place on the 8th of April. Be sure to share, subscribe, and leave a review on your favorite podcast channel. Thanks for listening to Drumbeats. Until next time.